So this is lecture 4 in the series of plant transformation strategies. This is the again disclaimer, usual disclaimer, that this is meant for you and it should not be used for any other purpose, copied or posted on any site without my permission. And some of the pictures in the presentation have been taken from public domain websites or some popular books to make the topic easy to understand. The credit for such pictures remain with the original publisher. Okay, so besides the agrobacterium mediated transformation, what are the other strategies? There are quite a few other, but the more common, as I said in the beginning in the first lecture, the one which is commercially used is microprojectile bombardment. And there are a couple of others, for example, electroporation is there, and virus, using viruses as vector. This is another strategy. But my understanding is that these two probably are more of academic interest, not very popular as far as the commercial exploitation of their commercial exploitation is concerned. But these are some of the other strategies. So let us see one by one these three strategies. So we'll start with the microprojectile bombardment. This microprojectile bombardment is the most recent and most commonly used now delivery system. Delivery system means for DNA delivery. This is the most recent, as well as it has now become one of the most popular also as far as DNA delivery is to plant cell is concerned. There are other names also. It is also called as biolistic gun method or gene gun method. These are the other names of this microprojectile bombardment method. And it was invented by Jesse Sanford and his colleagues, his team of another 3-4 scientists with him at Cornell University in USA, somewhere in mid-80s. I have seen one, this microprojectile gun when I was in US back in 1997. So it was rather relatively new at that time. So it was invented by J.C. Sanford and his colleagues at the Cornell University somewhere in mid-80s. This method, this novel method, and it's a physical method. This novel physical method uses accelerated microprojectiles to deliver DNA into intact cells or tissues. Typically, these microprojectiles are tiny beads, 1 micrometer in diameter particles. These microprojectiles are nothing but 1 micrometer diameter particles made of either tungsten or gold. Okay, and they are being used as microprojectiles. DNA is precipitated on the surface of these beads, these microprojectiles, and fired, literally fired with a gun. The velocity of the travel of this microprojectile is approximately 430 meters per second. Please remember, it's very high velocity. Okay, so it's literally a gun, okay, wherein these beads, these metal beads, which we are referring to as microprojectiles, they are coated with DNA of our interest, and they are fired with a very high velocity, something like 430 meters per second. And at this high velocity, they penetrate the plant cell or the tissue, the target plant cell or tissue, and once they are inside the plant cell, they can be expressed. So in this method, what is being done? So these are the steps. So you have the plant cell or tissue of our choice with whatever we want to transform. The cells or tissues of the plant to be transformed are placed in a vacuum chamber. So there is a chamber, it's built in there in the apparatus. Okay, and this chamber is evacuated, means a vacuum is created. So, and the plant cells or tissues to be transformed are placed in this chamber here. Then gas pressure, typically helium, is used as a carrier gas. So this particular chamber is pressurized with helium gas here, and once it reaches a threshold, the pressure of the helium, and the it varies from 400 psi to something like 2200 psi. That much pressure may be required in this particular chamber. Okay, and after once the threshold has been reached, depends upon the apparatus and different conditions, there is a rupture disc here. This disc ruptures, and this disc, along with this disc, there is a carrier disc attached to this rupture disc. This carrier disc, it can be made up of plastic. This is a carrier disc made up of plastic, which is bound, which is attached to this rupture disc. So once that particular pressure is reached, this disc gets ruptured, and this carrier disc, which carries those beads coated with DNA, it is fired. And I told you the speed. The speed is something like 400 meters per second because of the pressure of the gas. This disc gets ruptured, and this plastic disc, this plastic disc is coated with beads, metal beads. Okay, metal beads coated with DNA. This plastic disc contains metal beads coated with DNA. It gets fired, it takes off. The gas pressure shoots this plastic disc, and there is a stopping screen or a retention disc is there at the chamber of the at the entrance of the sample chamber. Okay, so this plastic disc is retained there, and because it has got screens in it, it has got holes in it, those beads, they pass through. Now please understand. So we are pressurizing this chamber with helium gas. The chamber pressure may vary between, the range is between 400 psi to 2200 psi. At a particular pressure, this disc gets ruptured, and there is a carrier disc attached to this rupture disc. This carrier disc, adhered to this carrier disc are those metal beads containing DNA. So this particular plastic carrier disc gets off from this place, because of the pressure, it moves away, and there is a retention disc, stopping screen is there. So it is being retained, whereas those metal beads, they pass through the screen and they enter the chamber, sample chamber, where you already put in your cells or tissues. As mentioned over here, the microprojectiles are stopped by a stopping plate, but the beads continue into the tissue below. The DNA gets introduced with the beads and is expressed in the plant cell. So this is a very simplified version of the bioelastic gun method. Actually it is simple, and that is why it has become so popular in a short period of time. Now what are the different parameters that need to be considered? Physical parameters include your particle should have enough mass, and therefore the choice of metal is very important in order to possess adequate momentum. Okay, because they are fired with a speed, but in order to possess adequate momentum to penetrate the tissue or the cell, they have to have a good mass. That is one important criteria. Metal, whatever metal you are using, should be chemically inert to prevent adverse reaction with DNA and cell component. So typically tungsten and gold, these are the two very commonly used methods. Suitable metal particles include gold, tungsten, palladium, rhodium, platinum, and iridium. Okay, of which these two, gold and tungsten, they are the most commonly used metal particles in microprojectile bombardment. Now again, what is the kind of DNA that you are precipitating on those metal beads? That also plays an important role. What is the kind of DNA means? Whether it is single-stranded or double-stranded, whether it is circular or linear, right? So the nature of DNA will also make a difference. The most optimal is double-stranded circular DNA. That means plasmid. Plasmid are the most suitable particular type of DNA for coating those beads. Now for the coating, sometimes some other chemicals are also being used. Certain additives are being used. For example, spermidine is one, and calcium chloride, CaCl2, is another one. These two are sometimes used for, used as additives. So to make the metal bits stay, to make the DNA stay on those metal bits. It is also important to target the appropriate cells. Choice of tissue, plant cell or tissue is again very important, because you need to select those which are competent for both transformation, means which can be transformed easily, as well as regeneration. Because just transformation is not the end of the story. You need to regenerate the whole plant. So those plant or those cells or those tissues should be amenable for tissue culture differentiation. Now, some of the biological parameters that need to be considered, for example, 3 parameters. Temperature, photoperiod and humidity. They have a direct effect on the physiology of the tissue. These 3, temperature, photoperiod and humidity, they play a very important role as far as the physiology of the tissue to be transformed is concerned. So these factors will influence receptiveness of the target tissue to foreign DNA delivery, and also these factors will affect their susceptibility to damage, because those beats are being fired with a considerable speed. They are likely to cause some damage or injury to the tissue also. So the damage and injury may adversely affect the outcome of the transformation process. Some explants, in some cases, depends, may require a healing period. So once you fire, after that you need to go, need to allow some period to go by, and that period is called as healing period. Because as I said, those metal bits are being fired with a lot of speed, so it is likely that they will cause damage or injury to the tissue. So some healing period is needed to be given after the bombardment, under special regimes of light, temperature and humidity. So these need to be very carefully standardized. This particular method has been successfully used for a number of crop species like maize, wheat, soybean, sugarcane, cotton, etc. So as I said, this is one of the popular method nowadays, and whatever crops, transgenic crops have been developed, in majority of them, this particular method has been successfully employed. So now you have basically 2 major transformation systems available. One is an agrobacterium mediated transformation that we have seen in details. Okay. So what are the characteristics of this agrobacterium mediated transformation? This is characterized by low transgene number, and it is one of the desirable features, that the plant that you are transforming should get minimum number of transgene. Ideally one number is ideal, but it is very difficult because it is not under your control. So typically agrobacterium tumefaciens mediated transformation results in low transgene number, less number of copies of the gene of your interest actually go into the plant. Ideally, I am saying one would like to have only just one transgene. Okay. Second important characteristic of agrobacterium mediated transformation is that it results in limited molecular rearrangement in the insert. So because you prepare a cassette, I told you in the previous lecture that you not only have gene of your interest, but you need to have suitable promoter, you need to have transcription termination signals, you need to have a selectable marker gene with its own promoter, with its transcription termination signals also. So it should not result in rearrangement of these genes. Okay. Agrobacterium tumefaciens mediated transformation results in limited molecular arrangement in the insert. The insert goes as it is with minimum rearrangements. And the third major characteristic of agrobacterium tumefaciens mediated transformation is its higher transformation efficiency. Okay, when you calculate the percentage of plant cells of plants that have been transformed, it gives a very high number. So it has got a higher transformation efficiency. But what are the limitations? The major limitation is that it shows species specificity. I told you in one of my earlier lecture that majority of the monocots, they cannot be transformed using this particular technique. Now, if you compare that technique with that of microprojectile bombardment, so what are the characteristics here? Some of the characteristics are shown over here. Now, typically in this method, you are pretty sure that you are introducing the full length of the transgene. This is important, but transgene may undergo some rearrangement. We have seen in earlier method, it doesn't, what you can say, result in much of rearrangements, whereas in this case, rearrangement can take place. Transgene copy number, which is an important criteria. I told you, ideally one would like to have just one, but in this case, the copy number may be pretty high. It can range between 1 to 20. Okay, and the advantage is that it doesn't have any species specificity. All plants, whether they are monocot or whether it is a dicot, all of them can be transformed using this particular method. But the disadvantage is that the cost of the equipment, that microprojectile gun, that shotgun, okay, that ballistic gun is very high. So these are some of the advantages as well as disadvantages of the techniques. Now, once you have transformed the plant cell, that transgene need to be analyzed. Okay, so what are the criteria, what are the parameters that are looked into to confirm the presence of gene of interest? This is criteria number one, whether actually your gene of interest has gone into the plant cell. To confirm its integration, successful integration with the host genome. There is another thing that scientists will look into. Third is to determine the number of sites, number of copies of the transgene, number of sites at which transgene has been integrated. So how many copies of the transgene has really got into the plant cell, and what are the sites where they have been integrated, and what is the level of expression, whether the gene that you have introduced is getting suitably expressed or not. That is another thing that one would like to analyze. So what are the techniques involved? So I told you in yesterday's, towards the end of my lecture yesterday, that primarily for the sake of understanding, you can classify them into two categories. You have biochemical methods and you have what are called as molecular methods. Biochemical methods, the initial screening, the distinction between the transformed plants and the non-transformed plant is made by biochemical method. What do? You allow those transformed plant cells to grow into a medium which contains either an antibiotic, which contain or an herbicide, okay, depending upon what marker gene you have introduced. For example, if you have used neomycin phosphotransferase 2, NPT2, then what you will do, you will allow those plant cells to grow in presence of neomycin. So only those plants which have received the transgene, they will survive over there. And those which have not received, because antibiotic is there, they will not be able to grow, right? Because they don't have, they have not received the gene which confers resistance to that particular antibiotic. Same is the case with herbicide resistance. So if you have used any one of those herbicide gene which confers resistance to herbicide, and if you grow them in presence of that particular herbicide, only those plant cells which have received the gene of your interest, they will grow because they also have received this gene which confers resistance to that particular herbicides. And those plant cells which have not received the copy, because in presence of herbicide, they will die. Okay. Similarly, you can use, if you have used a mannose phosphate isomerase gene, and then in that particular case, if you grow them in presence of mannose, mannose will be converted into the product by the enzyme, and the cells will grow, cells will survive, and those which have not received the marker gene will die in presence of that substrate because it is toxic to them. So this is the preliminary screening, biochemical screening. And more confirmatory is the molecular screening. So The presence is basically determined by southern blotting. So what do? You isolate the genomic DNA from the leaf tissues, okay, and then you digest it with some suitable restriction enzymes, prepare a southern blot, and hybridize it with a probe, which is complementary to gene of your interest. So if the gene of your interest has gone into the plant genome, then that probe will hybridize with it, and you will get an appropriate signal depending upon what kind of technique you are using. Radioactivity, radioactive labeled chemicals if you are using, you will see a band on X-ray film. Now fluorescent tags are also available. Okay, for expression, whether the gene is getting expressed and you are seeing the synthesis of protein, that can be assessed using Western blotting. Okay, so it will specifically give you a band of the protein, the gene codes. Okay, so that is Western blotting, or even ELISA can be used for that purpose. Then number of copies, it can be determined by PCR, polymerase chain reaction. Number of transgenic copy number in the plant cell can be determined using PCR. So there are different techniques. Elaborate work needs to be done to ascertain, to determine those criteria, number of copies of the transgene, whether it is suitably integrated in the plant genome or not, whether that integration is stable or not, whether it is getting properly expressed or not. All these can be decided by different types of molecular techniques. Now we'll come to the next, that is called as electroporation. This is another technique that is being used. What is done in electroporation is high concentration of plasmid DNA containing the gene of your interest that has been cloned appropriately in the plasmid DNA, and it is added to a protoplast suspension. Protoplast of the plant cells you would like to transform. So what you need to do, you need to prepare the protoplast first. Okay, from the plant you want to transform. Okay, and then very high concentration of plasmid DNA containing the gene of your interest along with selectable markers. They are added in the protoplast suspension, and this mixture is subjected to electric shock, typically of 200 to 600 volts per centimeter. So this electric shock, and this is only transient for a few seconds only. This transient electric shock is there, and the intensity is 200 to 600 volts per centimeter. At this this particular shock, it causes the membrane which surrounds the protoplast. Okay, it generates transient holes in that particular membrane, and the DNA, plasmid DNA, can get through, can get into the protoplast through those transient holes generated in the membrane. These protoplasts are grown in tissue culture and selection made for transformants. So as I said, you need to have suitable selectable marker genes also. So after this particular electroporation method, what do? You grow those protoplasts in tissue culture and you select the transformants. That means those protoplasts which have received the DNA from those which have not, using that selectable marker gene. And then those which have been transformed, they are then further grown using the protoplast culture technique. However, the disadvantage is that efficiency of this particular technique is very low. Experiments in rice and maize have shown that the efficiency ranges between 0.1 to 1%, which is very, very low efficiency. Because in the first place, synthesizing or generating protoplast itself is neck-breaking. And second, after you prepare the protoplast and you use this particular technique for transformation, the efficiency at which these protoplasts get transformed is very, very low. And as I said, therefore, these techniques are more of academic interest. However, this technique also doesn't have any species constraint. All plant cells, protoplast of all plant cells can be transformed using this particular technique. And electroporation apparatus is also available. It's a very sleek, small laptop size apparatus is there. Using that apparatus, you can do this experiment. Now, viruses as a vector. This particular option has also been explored. Primarily, they are very attractive because they are evolutionary adapted for systemic infection. Okay, because wherever they will infect, whatever site this virus is carrying the foreign DNA, the gene of your interest, infect the plant cell, they have inbuilt what you can say mechanism for systemic infection. So very soon that virus infection will spread throughout the plant body, right? So what does it mean? It means it circumvents the necessity of tissue culture technology. You can use directly the plant. You don't need to have a regeneration system. So therefore, these are very attractive. In particular, Gemini virus, which are DNA viruses. One good example of DNA virus is tobacco golden mosaic virus, TGMV in short. Tobacco golden mosaic virus, and it has got a very wide host range also. This is being used. The genome of this DNA virus, it is made up of two single-stranded DNA molecules. Please remember, two single-stranded DNA molecules are there, and each one go through a double-stranded replicative form. When the virus undergoes replication, each of these two single-stranded molecules go through a double-stranded replicative form. It's a very promising technique, but there are limitations on the size of DNA that can be integrated into the DNA of the virus. Okay, because the virus DNA itself is very small. Okay, some of the non-functional genes, non-functional DNA, that has to be replaced by the gene of your interest. Okay, so because of this, it poses some limitation on the size of the foreign DNA that can be introduced into the virus and enter into the plant cell. So that's all. These are the different techniques. Thank you very much.